I do want to start by saying thank you. Thank you to everyone present here today, to those friends and family who chipped in to help these services along. A big thanks goes to the members of this church community who have embraced our family from the start. And a thank you to anyone and everyone who has helped or has offered to help for the past 3.5 years. I hope you all can indulge me a little. I want to acknowledge something here before I get into all this. I want to say this isn't fair. None of what we're going through is fair. I don't mean just myself or our girls, but my heart breaks for them. But for all of you who knew her, loved her, cared for her, were cared for by her, and even more so, for those who never got the chance to meet Kimberly. Her best friend Tanya said it best in a text exchange we had a while back. She is love. I feel most for those who never had a chance to feel that love, for those who never had a chance to experience her radiance. This will always be unfair. This will always be downright cruel. We deserve better. Above all else, she deserved better. My wife started a company many years ago with the premise that every kid, no matter their abilities, could tell a story. That they, in fact, have a story to tell. She's someone who saw kids for who they were, not what they didn't have or couldn't do. Everyone has a story to tell. I want to tell hers, at least as well as I can. There are a lot of people in this room who know chapters I do not, who have pages stored away that I've never heard. I hope you'll feel able to share those stories at some point. When you are, I'll be ready to listen. I want the world to know the amazing woman, sister, mother, daughter, wife, friend, colleague, collaborator, and on she was. Her story is the story that matters most. The night we met was a Christmas party at our apartment in Astoria, Queens. I went there with my brother, who made an early exit that evening. I don't want to bore you with the details, but as the night went on, Kimberly and I flirted. Well, at least I thought we were. See, the thing was, being slightly younger and much more naive, I assumed we were flirting. Long story long, we ended up in her room together and nothing untoward happened that night. But after some very innocent making out, sorry girls, she said it was probably time for me to head home. Now, whether this exactly happened, or it is part of the mythology I've built up over the years, we'll just have to let slide today. I said I had no idea how to get there. That night, my home was my brother's apartment, maybe 4 blocks away. Maybe that was a lie. Maybe though, somewhere, somehow, I already knew, laying next to her, I was home. From the very start of our relationship, it was so very clear how loyal she was, and how much she cared for her family. Her niece Emma and her nephew Keith meant everything to her, and you could tell there was a high level of guilt being away in New York and not back here in Massachusetts. But she was meant to be a part of New York, and New York was all the better for it. 2 months into dating, she fulfilled one of her biggest goals in her life, to be a member of Actors Equity before the age of 30. She set out on a national tour of a show called Walk 2 Moons. We talked on the phone, and I got to see her perform when her show came to New Jersey. To no one's surprise, she lit up the stage. One of my favorite stories to tell from when we were first dating was a recurring response or bit that she would do. I'd say something snarky or sarcastic, surprise to no one, and without a pause, she would say, "You have 10 seconds to say something nice to me." And then she would start counting. She would always count. There would be the most wry smile on her face, but I knew if I didn't say something nice to her, your eyes, your smile, the way you say love bug, the way you fit just underneath my chin when we hug. We dated for a couple of years. We made lots of trips up here to Waltham and surrounding towns and cities. I swore I would never live here. We attended friends' weddings and we began discussing what the rest of our lives might look like if it was together. We talked about potential kids and where we'd live. I proposed to her in the middle of her adopted city as we walked through Times Square. For those of you who do know the story, yes, we were standing above a subway train. Will you marry me? Was met by a resounding, sure. affirmative response. It was not for lack of opinion or decision-making, really, but out of wanting to make me ask her happy, to be whole. She made me whole with that shore in Times Square. There were random people cheering for us, clapping to celebrate what had just happened. It's a moment that will be as near to me as any other over the past 18 years. Our wedding was a celebration. From the first words spoken at our ceremony to the final dance of the night, everyone had a great time, or so they told me. It was a night we were surrounded by absolute love, and shared absolute love with everyone who surrounded us. We moved to Matawan, a small town of Stones Throw from the start of the Jersey Shore. Then we moved to Westfield. It was during this time, Kimberly took a teaching job in New York City. The thing was, it wasn't just a teaching job in New York. It was a teaching job at Rikers Island. She would take the train from New Jersey to Penn Station in New York, then take the subway out to Queens, then take a bus ride out to Rikers, then get on another bus to get to the prison itself. She took the bus to teach teens Shakespeare. She taught Shakespeare to pre-trial prisoners. She wasn't allowed to bring in many materials, she wasn't allowed to bring in pictures of women, but somehow managed to teach Othello and have these teens understand who Desdemona was. I was working in Plainsboro, New Jersey at the time. We were living in Westfield, maybe a 40 or so commute, depending on the day. There was one particular day where Kim called me a few times asking when I would be home. I kept saying somewhere around 5:30. Okay, I'm just making dinner, so wanted to check, she said more than once. Now, Kimberly cooked most nights when we were first married. If she didn't, we got takeout. She was so insistent I'd be home that night. When I got home, dinner was on the table and I had a piece of paper on my dish. Mommy passed her test. See you in March. Wrapped inside the paper was a pregnancy test. And this is how Kimberly told me she was pregnant with Nora. She was destined to be a mother. She was so prepared to bring children into this world and make the world a better place by raising them the way she thought was best. One of my favorite stories to tell from her pregnancy with Nora was from the hospital delivery room. Kimberly's mother, Karen, and her stepdad, Dave, made the trip up to Florida to be present for the pending birth. We had to go the route of induction as Nora was unsurprisingly stubborn. We were told it could take a while. Now, for those of you who never met Karen, she was a wonderfully determined woman. She and Dave were set to go back to Florida at the end of the week and truly wanted to stick to their schedule. Karen was unafraid to let Kimberly know she was, in fact, on the clock. As the day turned to night and the shift change happened amongst the doctors there, a new doctor stepped into the room to double check how she was doing. Do you feel any pressure? The doctor asked. Again, without a pause, Kimberly raised her right hand and said, just from this corner of the room.
Pretty soon.
We moved back to one of her homes, Astoria, Queens, where life wasn't always easy. My brother Stephen lived in our basement for a while. It was great for our family, but even better for me, as I had a front row seat to one of the greatest unknown comedy duos of all time. Kimberly and Stephen understood each other better than any two people I've ever met. Being in their presence when they joked was some of the best times I've ever had. Of course, we weren't always smiling and laughing. We struggled with money at times, as so many of us do. We found a way by listening to one another. She challenged me to be a better version of myself, even when she may not have been so thrilled with the version in front of her. She opened my eyes to how to talk to kids and engage our children in a way I couldn't have fathomed before. She made me a better person. It was during this time in Queens that Kimberly started Story Shifters. Story Shifters was born as a way to help special needs students learn folk tales and fairy tales and shift them to their own performances. Over the years, that program grew and evolved. I do truly hope to see it continue in some form. In Queens, we welcomed Maeve, our second daughter. Now, the name Maeve was one that Kimberly had stored in the back of her head for so long, so much so that it was actually part of my vows 15 years back.
I vow to open my mind to everything we want and crave, do my best to understand it all, even the name Maeve.
A former student and later a friend of Kimberly's at Rebel Shakespeare, a summer intensive camp Kimberly worked at on and off over the years, shared this story. Quote, The summer of 2004, I was 10 years old. I was put into a summer theater program a few days late because I was a late sign-up. So I had an audition the same day I got there. Not having ever done something like this before, naturally, I was nervous. I was brought over to a picnic table where Kimberly was sitting and was given a script. She asked my name. "Oh, your name is Maeve? I love the name Maeve. If I ever have a daughter, I'm going to name her Maeve." She kept her word. In that moment, Kim made me feel safe, wanted, like I mattered. She continued to do that for me as a director and eventually as my mentor and my friend. She affirmed hard feelings and pushed us to be better artists as well as adults. She was a fierce protector, but it was always done in love. End quote. Maeve made our family form. She and Nora were thick as thieves from the moment Maeve entered this world, and Kimberly was masterful in teaching them, working, keeping us moving forward, and still staying true to who she was as an individual. Again, it wasn't always easy. Looking back, those issues, they were small potatoes, but even with those small potatoes, there was no one else in the world I could imagine handling them with her. Kimberly was so often at her best when she was taking care of someone or tending to someone else's needs. There were a string of losses that she endured that on their own would have challenged the mettle of the strongest person. Altogether, it was astounding how she moved forward. Over the span of a few months, Kimberly lost her nephew Zachary and her grandmother Eleanor as well. She made her way out to Washington to help comfort her brother and the rest of her family, while also saying goodbye to a nephew who was such a light in this world. Nanny's passing was more expected, but still, one that was a gut punch to a family that had been led by her as a matriarch for so long. In each instance, I watched my wife cry, hurt, worry, rally, support, and love more than anyone I had ever known. Likely, ever will know. She did everything in her power to provide shelter and help whenever she was called upon. She was fiercely loyal, protective, caring, and present. We bought our grandmother's house in Warrendale, Waltham, Massachusetts. I did move here. We moved our two girls from Astoria to here. Kimberly returned to a place she had candidly run away from many years back. She moved back here fully embracing her family and her own history, while also letting go of some of her dreams. She moved back here knowing she'd get questions about her career, about her family, and about what was next. She handled that all over time. Thank you to a Waltham staple, the Connors Halloween party. We welcome Dalish to our family in July of 2016. Kimberly joked often about how her pregnancy with Ailish was deemed geriatric, but then her diagnosis put her in the young and strong group of those dealing with metastatic breast cancer. Kimberly would lose her mother 2 days after Ailish was born. She'd lose her stepfather, Dave, a year later. She dealt with a lot of loss before she was even diagnosed. She pushed forward to provide for her daughters and continued to try to grow Story Shifters and work with a social-emotional learning company, the Worry Roos. Some 4 years ago, I had one of the worst days I can remember. I woke up feeling slightly off. We got the girls, Nora and Maeve, off to school. As the morning progressed, I let Kimberly know I didn't feel great. Sometime around 9:30 or so, maybe later, I sat down in our love seat and let her know I was having some trouble breathing, and maybe I should see a doctor. "Breathe, love bug. It's going to be okay," she said. It got worse. I was now having a full-blown anxiety attack, hyperventilating and everything. She was so calm. She told me she was going to call 911. She gave me a hug and reminded me, breathe, just breathe. It was a long day, 4 or 5 hours in the ER, trying to get my breathing under control. She took such great care of me, that day, that night, and beyond. But the idea, the focus, just breathe, stuck with me and became how I was able to focus on what mattered and try to let go of what didn't. Even feeling her worst, she was always focused on taking care of others. That was true from the day we met to the final day we'd spent together. She always checked in on others first and asked if they were okay. She reminded me to take some time to just breathe many times. In February, Kimberly wasn't doing great. We're at Dana-Farber with her palliative care nurse practitioner. His name is Dan Corman. He's an amazing person, an amazing nurse. I do have to add here, Kimberly always said he reminded her of Stephen Colbert. She did that a lot. She would be such a huge fan of someone and would compliment them and then would go even a step further by saying they reminded her of someone else she admired a lot. Either way, she wasn't doing well, and the discussions around hospice and end-of-life care had begun. Dan was very specific that no decisions were being made, but that he was making sure to lay out what could and might happen or need to happen. He asked a very simple question of her. What are your priorities? Again, she didn't miss a beat. I want to make sure they are okay, she said. As she said they, she flicked her eyes over towards me. Even in this moment, where she was in pain, where it would have been so very easy for most anyone to have a moment about themselves, she didn't flinch. She didn't bat an eye. Her first priority was her family. It was her girls. This wasn't the first time, and it wasn't the last time at Dana-Farber that Kimberly held court, said something funny, said something profound, whatever it might be. Early on in her treatment, her nurse Sandy, another one of the most amazing people you ever meet, came to her chair to apologize that her meds weren't quite ready yet. I'm so sorry, the pharmacy is backed up, Sandy explained. Then Kimberly didn't miss a beat. It's okay. You are literally saving my life right now. I can't go down the street and get chemo from somebody in the alley. It's okay, we can wait. When seeing her oncologist, Dr. Porbu, she always asked about his kids and kept track of their fourth being on the way, even as she dealt with major progression on her liver. She brought her nurses gifts, and they did the same. 3 of them, Sandy, Leanne, and Ollie, all sang her happy birthday last month and brought her flowers. She was a light to so many people, even those who were there consoling and cajoling and taking care of cancer patients through their treatments. And even as her time with us was coming to an end, she continued to crack jokes and educate anyone who came across her path. On the Sunday she went into the ER, she went to get a CT scan. As the nurses helped her bed out of the room, I said, "Happy travels." The nurse taking her said, "Isn't that a song? Happy trails?" The nurse then began to sing, "Happy trails to..." Now I want to acknowledge first of all that maybe that nurse didn't have the best understanding of the song and what my wife was going through at that time. But Kimberly, groggy as all get out, says, "You know, as cast members leave a show on Broadway or off-Broadway, it's tradition for cast members to sing that after their last show." Always, always educating. As they rolled her away, she continued to explain the historical context of it all. And then, as she was wheeled back in from the CT scan, I could hear her discussing self-care with the same nurse. Trying to convince her how important it was for nurses to take care of themselves. She was always educated. She was always caring. Kimberly loved effortlessly. She loved her family and friends. She loved the Beatles, Huey Lewis and the News, Jesse's Girl, especially the line, "I want to tell her that I love her, but the point is probably moot." She loved the beach, well, when it was overcast and rainy. She loved telling stories and those who had a passion for it. She loved Lin-Manuel Miranda. She loved the Goonies and the Muppets Take Manhattan. She loved Shakespeare and Slings and Arrows. She loved Miss Mahoney's 3rd grade class. She loved me, and I'll be forever grateful for that. She loved her family, she loved her friends, she loved her girls. Kimberly was so many things to so many people. She was a comedian, a teacher, a co-conspirator, an upstander, an actress, a mother, a sister, a listener, a therapist, a wife, a hugger, a writer, a mentor, and a friend. She would travel down the road and back again. Her heart was true. She was a pal and a confidant. Golden Girls reference. She was truly one of a kind and someone who taught me so very much. I'm going to miss her more than I can really comprehend right now. I love her to the moon and back again and forever and a day. One of the things Kimberly introduced to our family was something we call Calm Down. Its origins are back to when we first moved up here to Massachusetts. Nora, our oldest, was having some trouble getting to sleep and dealing with some general anxiety. Through one of her jobs, Kimberly had done a bit of work on self-care and self-reflection. We got Nora and her sister Maeve set by letting them know it was a safe place and this would be a way to take deep breaths. We do it most nights still, before all three girls go to bed. So, if you'll indulge me, I'd love to walk you through it now and ask you to answer these questions in your head. I do know it's early in the day, but if you all could do your best to answer these questions yourself, I think she would love it. What's been the best part of your day? What's been the worst part of your day? What are 4 things you're grateful for? What are you looking forward to? Today, tomorrow, or in the future? Damn straight, silly. I feel like I could go on for a number of more pages. Honestly, I've already started writing more. I won't be sharing them today. As it is, I try my best to be brief here, but I'll leave you with this. One of the great discussions, debates, almost arguments Kimberly and I had was around faith and religion. About what else might be. Our views varied. I've been thinking a lot about this though. Kimberly will continue to live on inside each and every person present here. Inside anyone she ever made laugh, feel better, or heard. She'll live on in our 3 girls. Her sisters and her cousins, her friends and colleagues, and me. She'll live on in the amazing memories and advice and love she provided. And that is heaven to me. Her having so many people carrying her forward each and every day.